What's up, Nova Heads? It's Amber Nova.
This is Chris Lights Out Lytle.
Hi, this is Ray Boom Boom Mancini. Ice Boogie.
It's the real and raw August Artois.
This is Smiling Sam Alvey.
It's Archimedes.
I'm Jack Cartwheel, the real deal, the human highlight reel.
This is Steve Mowry.
I'm Victor Henry.
Boy, Bulletproof Troop. Billy Clark.
It's ECW Original, The Enforcer, C.W. Anderson.
This is Honest John.
Hyper Street. Luis Moreno. And it's Mr. Classic.
I'm Jason Punet.
The young ghost.
It's old Hattie Price here.
When I say what's my name, Snipes.
Richie Slade.
My name is Gino Rivera, the Frank Sinatra of the Spanish Mafia.
The incredible one, Anthony Idol.
This is Ken Shamrock.
The Golden Boy, Jordan Clearwater.
Yo, watch and listen.
Championship online.
This is Alex Mars here. Hi, Richard Modest.
So, please listen to it, otherwise be cursed. Okay, see you later, love that dinners.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. You're now watching and listening to Championship on the Line podcast. And today we have another special episode. I know I say it all the time, but this is really special because we have a wrestler in the house. She has been killing it right now all over California, but also wrestling for places like Micro Mania, also EWF as the Empire Wrestling Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Queen of Hearts, ladies and gentlemen. Again, thank you so much for being here. Really do appreciate you taking the time to do this.
I'm glad to be here as well. Yeah.
Awesome.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing really well. How about yourself?
I'm good. Yeah. Keeping busy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And before we start the interview, we do like to do a segment where we ask rapid questions, 10 rapid questions to get to know you a little bit. Is that cool we do that for you?
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So question number 1. What is your favorite movie of all time?
Favorite movie? I would say Wizard of Oz.
Is that nice? With the second question, favorite TV show of all time?
The 70s Show?
Oh, okay, nice.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite character from that show?
I think Donna.
Nice.
Yeah.
I remember watching it like as a little kid because I know my parents would watch it, and I would watch it like, oh, this is not bad. This is pretty funny. And then now older, now it's like more funnier than what. Yeah, awesome show. Third question: what is your favorite band or music artist you like to listen to?
That's a good one. I really like ABBA.
Okay.
Like the 70s, like.
Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen them in Mamma Mia. Like pretty much all the songs of Mamma Mia is ABBA. So.
What would be your favorite song from them?
I don't know. I don't really have a favorite song. I listen to a lot of them, so.
Okay, cool. Awesome. And then with the next question, what is your favorite season? Are you like winter person, summer person, fall, or spring?
I'd have to say summer. Yeah, I don't like the cold, so I like the summertime.
Yeah, warm. Nice. And then I don't know if you're a gamer, but what is your favorite video game if you have one?
I am not a gamer. I don't
play
games.
Awesome, no worries. And then with the next question, if you like sports, do you have a favorite sports team?
Sports? No, I don't follow sports.
Okay, cool, no worries.
I know. I just do sports,
No worries. And then with the next question, what is your favorite meal you like to eat?
Favorite meal? Sushi.
Sushi?
Yeah.
Nice. Outside of wrestling, do you have a hobby you like to do?
Yes, I do sew. So I sew my own gear. I sew other people's gear. So that's kind of my hobby is sewing.
Nice. It's crazy because now you don't really see wrestlers doing their own gear anymore, which is pretty cool. You sew it and do your own thing. That's pretty cool. How long have you been sewing?
I think under 2 years, a little bit under 2 years. Yeah, I started during the pandemic. I was like, I have nothing better to do, and I've always wanted to learn how to sew, so why not sew?
Nice. I like it. Awesome. With the next one, before your match, do you have a ritual you like to do before you go in the ring?
Ritual. I don't really think it's like anything particular. Like I just kind of go through the match in my head, trying to like make sure I have everything, and then kind of go out. Like I'm not too much like a eventually I'll probably have like a ritual, like, but I get dressed, I take my pictures, that they do backstage, like take pictures, do that kind of stuff. I kind of like run around the place because the locker room is stuffy, so I'm like usually outside greeting fans, going back, going through the match in my head. And
okay, cool, nice. And with the last question, if you could have a match with someone that isn't a wrestler, it could be a celebrity, it could be an athlete, it could be a character from a show or a movie, who would it be?
Oh, not a wrestler? Oh, I've never thought about that. A non-wrestler. I don't know what the actor's called, but like Royal Rumble, like the guy that's like the king. You know what I'm talking about? Like
Ready to Rumble? Oh yeah.
Ready to Rumble, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool to do like something like that, wrestle one of them.
Okay, cool. Oh, Jimmy the King, right? You mean?
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's a first too, because it's like we always thought like, oh, maybe we'll talk about like wrestling movies. And no one ever mentions Ready to Rumble, which is crazy, But how would you see that match going?
Well, I'm the Queen of Hearts, and he's the king, so I think it'd be kind of like a cool like twist off of the characters. So I don't know really. Nothing like in particular that comes to my mind, but I think it'd just be kind of like a funny, cool like matchup.
Oh, okay. Would you do the triple cage?
No. I'm hesitant with one cage, let alone three of them.
Awesome. Yeah, that movie's so good too. Like every scene, I know it's like a hit and miss. Like people do like it, then people don't like it, but I think it's up there with wrestling movies.
Yeah, it's really good. Like, I would never guess that the wrestling wasn't like they didn't know what they were doing.
Oh yeah, and especially like the beginning too, when they had the match like in the convenience store, which I thought was awesome too.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good scene. But yeah, that's awesome though. I love Ready to Rumble. But again, before starting, I want to say thank you again for taking the time to do this. Really happy to have you. But again, like take us back, I want to take us back to like the beginning. So like, how did you first kind of got introduced to wrestling? Like, how did that all start for you?
I've always like throughout the years of growing up, I've seen a couple live matches, like I've seen them in San Jose with the WWE TLC, and I've seen one, like a local one when I was like 5 or 6, and I wasn't like super into wrestling. Like most people that like join pro wrestling is like, oh, I'm a super fan, I collect belts, I have all this like, like
action figures like behind.
That's a good example, all your action figures and stuff like that. Like that was never me. I did like MMA stuff, so I did like jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, a lot of like collegiate wrestling, like high school
and
stuff. I did wrestling since I was 7. Then I was kind of in a weird spot after I graduated college. I was like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. So my dad's like, oh, here's a flyer for a wrestling school nearby you. I was like, oh, yeah, maybe. Like, I sat on it for a month, and I was like, what do I have to lose? Like, if I don't like it, I don't go back. If I do like it, I'll do it. And I do like it. So I've been doing it for about a year and 3 months or 4 months, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then like also you saying you did like MMA and jiu-jitsu, amateur wrestling. How did that come about, you doing martial arts?
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I started martial arts because I was getting picked on when I was a kid. Like when I was in preschool, I was getting my hair pulled and all that kind of stuff, and my parents were like, you need to like learn how to defend yourself and be able to stick up for yourself, and want you to be like a strong young lady. And so they got me into it. They're like, oh, like if you do this, then you could do the dance class even when they need to. And I was like, okay. And I hated it first. and then I kind of like won my first little in-house tournament, and like that kind of like, oh, I can actually do this. And then I was like a sponge after that, trying different, like I started at the pit. I don't know if you know.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So Chuck Liddell, John Ackerman.
Yeah.
Before it was all before Chuck Liddell was the Chuck Liddell.
Yeah, the guy.
Yeah. But yeah. So I trained there with them for a little bit, and then moved on to jiu-jitsu and wrestling when I was 7, and then kind of transferred.
Oh, nice. Awesome. Yeah, I could relate to that because like I was bullied in school too, and that's how I found like boxing, and I started doing wrestling in high school. So that's so cool. I can totally relate to that because like I know my parents signed me up like you have to do something. You gotta do something to like defend yourself because I was always getting picked on in fights. So like, I had to do something, and all I knew was dirty moves, which that didn't work because I was like a wrestling fan, so like none of that stuff worked. But yeah, it's so cool. But like doing martial arts and then going into wrestling, was there ever a thought that maybe you would pursue a career in MMA and be an MMA fighter? Was there ever a thought of that?
Yeah, maybe that was kind of like the route originally, but then I went to college and it was really hard to like stay up. And I did some jiu-jitsu, I did some judo in college, but it was really hard to keep up with my grades, my schoolwork, because I would have tests and essays and homework and all this stuff. And homework is optional, but it is very, very important to do it because then you don't learn if you don't do it. I could like hold it off for like a day, but then I'd be like, I have to do it the next day. Like I'd always have to like push back maybe one day. So like my training kind of slowed down. And then when I graduated, I was trying to find another school that I was going to go into because I was kind of in a weird spot that I didn't want to drive like 50 minutes away, 40 miles away to go train. So it's like, oh, is there any gym a little bit closer, like 20 minutes or 10 minutes away from me? So it's in that like weird spot of like, oh, I'm gonna join, I'm gonna start competing again. And I was like, but it's also during the pandemic too. So it's like, I'm gonna spend $150 a month and be in a contract for them to possibly close down. And I'm just losing money. I'm spending money and losing money. So that's kind of where I was like a weird spot, like, oh, like I was going to compete again. And I was like, eh. And then I found wrestling right at that time. So that's kind of what like tilted it the other way. I was like, oh, training is free here, and like if the pandemic gets worse again, like I won't be losing $150 a month.
Oh yeah, because like even before the pandemic, I was like doing a lot of tournaments in jiu-jitsu and going to gyms, and then pandemic happened. It's like I'm like the same thing. I'm not gonna pay for money for something and then they close down or never come open. But going into like making the move to pro wrestling, well, how like did your family and friends like react to that news? Like you were gonna shift to going into pro wrestling?
My dad's the one that kind of like showed me the like flyer. So he was like kind of like, I don't know if he was like really serious about it or not. I don't even know to this day, but he's kind of shocked that I was willing to try. He's like, like you've done everything else, why not try this? He didn't think I was.
Is your dad a wrestling fan too, or no?
He was when he was younger. He was, like he watched during the Attitude Era, that kind of stuff. But after that, he kind of like stopped watching it. So he was kind of a fan, like he likes watching live shows. He took me to a couple of them when I was younger, but not like crazy or anything. He wasn't like, oh, like like, but he's been watching a lot more wrestling since I've started wrestling. That like helped me understand, like, because that's a huge like part for me is like understanding the psychology and like putting it all together for me was really hard because I'm like, this doesn't make sense. Like this would never happen. Like why am I running to the ropes when you're like down? Like why am I not just
Oh yeah, and then like talking about how did it come about? Like what was your like first off, like what school did you actually train at
for pro wrestling?
Yes.
So it's called Kayfabe College. It's in Santa Maria, California, like Central California, like Pismo Beach area. Like it's right around there. Yeah.
Okay, so, and then like, what was like your first day of wrestling school? Like, what was that feeling like going to, wrestling for the first time?
We work out of a storage unit, so it's kind of like, am I gonna get murdered right now? Like, I was like, I'm going to the middle of nowhere, like, and I don't know any of these people. I actually ended up knowing a couple of the people. Like, when I showed up, I was like, oh, I went to school with you. Oh, I used to wrestle with you. So I ended up knowing some of the people. Like, once I arrived, I was like, oh, I know you. I was like, okay. Like, I felt a little bit more comfortable, but it was definitely a shock, a lot different than like wrestling, because like wrestling you're supposed to land on your stomach or your side, and pro wrestling you're supposed to land straight on your back. So getting used to bumping on my back was a huge like difference, but a lot of the rolls, a lot of the throws was stuff that I already knew, so I kind of picked it up really quickly. I was able to progress past that because, quarter rolls, we do that in wrestling. Forward rolls, we do those in wrestling. Back rolls, that's all just part of my warm-up normally. So that wasn't like too big of a difference for me personally. But yeah, it was definitely a shock seeing like how people worked, and I was like, I don't get this. I don't get this. Why are we why? Like I felt like I was like one of those little like birds that are like, why?
Yeah.
Like the cartoon movies, because I was like, I don't understand this. Like, why would we do this? Why? Or we would do a drill. I'm like, okay, but why are we doing this? Like, I always want to know why. Now I'm not asking so many whys because I kind of understand it after having a year or so experience. But in the beginning, I was just like, oh, okay, why are we doing this? What is this evolving to? They're like, oh, we would never do this in a match. I'm like, okay, it's just a drill. We're not, like, I'm like, when I go back and forth doing takedowns, I'm not going to realistically do that in a match. It's just the way to gain repetitions in. So I was like, okay, yeah, that makes sense now,
Yeah, I really to like doing like wrestling in high schools, like we do all these drills, and it's just like, why are we doing this? Like, this doesn't make no sense. And then, then you find out like, oh, well, yeah, it works.
Yeah, so that's basically what I had to do for like pro wrestling, is like understand why we were doing these drills, because to me it made no sense. But like afterwards, you're like, they explained it, so I would ask. Like, I feel like I was the only one talking. I'm like, okay, so what's the point of this? Why are we doing this? Like, everyone else like already knows. They're like, like, do you not watch wrestling? And then I'm like, no, I don't know watch wrestling. I've seen like 3 or 4 shows. That's it at that point.
Oh man, I could imagine maybe they kind of did they ever joke you with that? Like, knowing that you didn't watch a lot of wrestling, like in the whole class?
They gave me like shit, they're like, you're doing this and you don't know, and people are still shocked because we had some big names like Tommy Dreamer and Carlito the last show. I'm like, I have never seen either one of those wrestle. Like, I've never. And they're like, you don't know who that is? I'm like, no, am I supposed to?
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, like,
some of them were jokes. They're like, get out of the room, then. Like, you don't deserve to be in here, or stuff like that. Like.
Okay.
I'm like, my bad.
No, that's cool. Like, because like we've had wrestlers that got into wrestling very, very late, and then now they start watching. So it's it happens. But like, I'm guessing when you are in wrestling school, there's a lot of our diehard fans, right? When you're training with
basically all of them.
Yeah.
They're all like, I grew up with this. I have 10 belts on display. I have all this. I had like, one of the guys, his favorite is like John Cena. So he like dresses up as him. He like watches the Peacemaker, all this other stuff. Like,
wow.
He's big Mark. He like loves like everything. He's like, but like they're all like super fans, so they're like always talking about wrestling and wrestling video games. I'm just like, I have I watch wrestling more, but I still have no clue like half the time what they're talking about. Because I didn't grow up with it, so I'm playing like catch up, like they have like 10-15 years of watching it. I have a month or 2 of watching it, like I'm like, I've watched a lot of wrestling, but I'm still like not up to their par because they're like, and then a lot of time I don't watch new wrestling, so they talk about a lot of new wrestling like AEW and stuff like that. And I'm like, they like watch it like every single day. They're like, okay, so this, you know, they follow everything. I'm like, how do you have the time? Like, do you just not do anything else?
Yeah.
I'm like, I work, I sew, I do all this stuff. How do you have the time to watch like 3 hours of wrestling like every day, you know? I don't know.
Well, the important thing is you're watching it now. That's the important thing. You're getting into it now.
Definitely am. They were shocked. They were shocked. They're like, wow, you actually know some wrestling. I'm like, I do, you know.
Oh man, that's crazy. But going into, you know, like I said, make transitions to pro wrestling, was it difficult for you from coming from like a martial arts background where you're punching and kicking and doing submissions for real, now going into pro wrestling where you kind of have to dial it down? Was it difficult making that transition into wrestling?
Not really that much because I would teach a lot, so I knew how to like, you know, like not punch like completely all the way because I would be working with kids, you know, like punching them, kind of doing like that, so they get used to getting hit and kind of stuff like that. So, like no, not necessarily because I did have that teaching background where I had to learn how to not put all my strength in punching someone. The same thing like when you do a lot of martial arts, like every punch you do isn't going to be the hardest punch because you would get exhausted, you know. You're training for 2 hours straight, you know. If you punch, you know, as hard as you can every single punch, like you're going to be exhausted by the end of it. But it wasn't that big, I guess. Some of my throws, I'm like, you don't want me to follow you to the ground, like you just want me to like, you know, like just hip toss you and then sit there. That's kind of a little bit different, but besides that, I kind of like translated into
and also, like you said, having all those years and doing like martial arts, how much did that help you going into pro wrestling?
I think a lot because I knew a lot of submissions, you know. I feel like a lot of them are the same, you know, ankle lock, knee bar, rear naked choke. They call it different things, but you know, they call it different things. But those are like the jiu-jitsu terms, and I see those a lot. Or you know, figure fouring. I would do that in wrestling. You know, there's like hip tosses that I do in wrestling that was like, oh, these are exactly the same. Especially in lucha, a lot of lucha stuff. I'm like, oh, okay, you guys do the hip toss like this. It's exactly the same as what I've done before, or kind of like but I'm also allowed to incorporate a lot of the stuff that I do. Like I do Granbys, like flippy things, like I do it in standing. But my class, the classes I go to are very like open to what I have in my past and allow me to like incorporate into that. But I think it helps a lot because I had that fundamentals, you know, like of rolling, of sprawling, all that kind of stuff, which is a lot in wrestling. Like wrestling, like, you know, you do the drop downs, which is basically just a fancy sprawl. That's how I see it. I'm like, oh, it's just a fancy sprawl. The rolls for me at least were pretty much the exact same. Like we do the pop-up back rolls, we do the forward rolls, we do the quarter rolls, we do all those. So I think it helped a lot because I competed in under a year, like did my first match in under a year, when there's people who's been training there longer, you know, that haven't done a match. So I think it helped a lot.
And also like going into pro wrestling, like going training in pro wrestling, like what, especially in your school, what did the training consist of? Like what was the day-to-day, like what workouts did you do? What did you guys work on? Like what was a typical day in training?
We do about 30 to 40 minutes of warm-up. So we do our like hitting the ropes, we do our rolls, we do the rolls off the ropes, we do like drop down drills, we do the corner drills where you like grab the ropes, jump on top of them. We go up and over the ropes, or the up and over drills, we go over someone. we did those kind of drills. And then just depending on the day, we would either work on like spots, so universal spots or some other simple spots that we came up with. And then we would move on to, learning new moves or practicing moves that we've been struggling with, getting the big blue mat so we're not like taking all those bumps because it's hard on your body. Like,
oh yeah.
I remember my first bump, I had like, because our ring is not as spring loaded, it's the boards. So I would have like marks along my back, like just from the board, just smacking the back of my I'm like, I don't miss those days, because I think the very first day I showed up, I did bumps. Like,
oh no.
I know. The guy got really excited because like I knew how to roll already. So he's like, okay, we're gonna bump today. I'm like, what is a bump? You don't know what a bump is? No, like basically teach me like I'm a 5-year-old because I don't know any wrestling. So
you should have did your research before you went in. Like terminology.
I honestly just showed up. Like my coach told them beforehand because he was on tour. But like she doesn't know any wrestling, but I don't think they really understood of like I don't know any wrestling, pro wrestling. They kind of were like, everyone knows pro wrestling because in their world everyone knows pro wrestling. So they're kind of shocked, but they got used to it. They're like, oh, it's just, it's just her, that's how she is.
But again, it's now so like that's important. Yeah. Which is awesome. But like, like in the past, like I've interviewed guys like wrestlers and martial artists, and their goal was to always kind of bring that aspect into pro wrestling. Was that important to you? Like, hey, I'm gonna bring in the takedowns and do jiu-jitsu techniques into pro wrestling. Was like the goal for you, like while training, or were you kind of open to like doing new styles like lucha and stuff like that?
I was open to new styles because I wasn't stuck in my world when I did mixed martial arts. Like I would try judo, jiu-jitsu, krav maga, muay thai, jiu-jitsu. I've done all these different things. I kind of take it as its own entity. Like judo throws are a lot different than jiu-jitsu throws. Like you grab the gi more, you kind of toss them. Like I took it as a new plate. My coach is the one that was like, you should. I was like, yeah, I want to incorporate it. But he's the one that kind of like, no, you need to incorporate it, because from my experience of watching pro wrestling, like I don't know, like doing a full like mixed martial art background, like you make that your whole thing. To me, from watching it doesn't sell well. Like the fans, like pro wrestling fans, don't like it. They like it here and there, but I don't think they really like it being like completely, because they like the pro wrestling style. They like the big flashy, moves and kind of like that, not the like grappling part. Because if they wanted to do that, then they would watch MMA, they would watch UFC. That's kind of what my understanding is that like, they think it's cool sometimes, especially some of the stuff if you make it more entertaining, like add a spin to it, because that's what I do when I do my judo, jiu-jitsu, hip toss. I'm like, okay, I grab it, I spin, and then I throw, because then it makes it like more flashy. So I take moves that I know and I make it more flashy, because if I just do it out of nowhere, it doesn't pop as well. Like the fans don't go crazy over it as much. So just learning how to do that. I think it can be incorporated. It just has to be slightly different,
Yeah, it's like you have to put like a remix to it.
Yeah. But from my experience from watching wrestling, like pro wrestling on the TV, like the big stars, it doesn't sell as well. You have to do the bigger moves and more flashy moves. They like seeing that because that's what they're there for,
Yeah, especially like because like I love that style of wrestling, like technical wrestling, and unfortunately, it's not really well liked here. I mean, it's like a hit and miss. I mean, like in Japan, it's big over there, especially like that martial art background and shoot wrestling and everything. But like during training, was there like any footage on like specific wrestlers that you would watch tape on to kind of get inspiration for your ring style?
A little bit, I watched like Becky Lynch. That was someone who I inspired a lot by, and as well as like Stone Cold Steve Austin. Because how I was in wrestling, I kind of wanted to bring that like attitude, that persona into my pro wrestling world. Like I'm the baddest in the ring. Anyone who steps in that ring with me, like they're gonna go down. But I still wanted to be over with the fans, like be that in between, like be aggressive, but the fans still like you, which has been working well. People like in the pro wrestling world hated it. I'm not gonna lie, like they hated it. They're like, it's gonna be super hard for you. It's like anything good is gonna be hard, It's the way you present yourself. I want to be over with the fans, but I want to be able to be my aggressive, fast self, not this, like, oh, sit back, get beat up on, kind of that kind of stuff. Like, be aggressive, be fast, be mean in the ring, but, like, be like, it's nothing to do with the fans. It only has to do with the person sitting right across from me.
Oh, yeah. And then, like, talking about, guests, with working with, psychology in the fans and also doing, like, promos and mic skills, did you guys work that a lot when you were training at your wrestling school?
Not mic skills. That's something I've been working on when I do the Micro Mania. Like I've been, talking on the mic a lot more. I'm very I have a lot of stage fright, so like I don't like when I see everyone, I'm like, oh, there's a lot of people. Yeah. But it's something I've been working on since high school. I got definitely better in college because then I had to take a speeching class, so I had to speak in front of a group of people like every week. Every week I had to go out there and present, whatever. But doing the Micromania definitely has helped me. Doing these like interviews, that's why I like try to do as many as I can because it helps me like get comfortable talking, like so. And
also like I would imagine it would be different from like doing like, let's say like an amateur wrestling match, like because it's kind of like it's a fight, and doing this, it's like it's a totally different level, because you got to work with the fans and do mic skills. Was that nerves? Like, was that always for wrestling too, amateurs? It's completely different.
I would have nerves when I would go out and compete, but I have like more nerves when I have to talk.
Yeah.
Competing, like me doing my show and me doing wrestling, I get the same nerves. But when I have to go out there and like talk on the mic, it's like worse. Yeah. It's worse because like now everyone is focused on me and only me and what I'm saying, which drives me like crazy. And just like what if I mess up? What if I do this? Like every worst scenario is going through my mind. Like I'm just like, oh, but I've definitely gotten better. Like I've done a couple like 4 or 5 Micromania shows. So I've had to talk on the mic. I've gotten a little bit more comfortable. I'm not up there for very long.
Yeah.
Short periods of time, and then
baby steps.
Yeah. But psychology was talked about a lot, like how to run a match, what's the the match, like how to get the fans, that was definitely brought up in my classes. But it's really hard when there's not a crowd to feed you,
Yeah.
Being with the crowd is a lot different than like 4 or 5 people in the ring, like it's a lot different feeling because then you can feel what they're feeling, the fans, like if they like it or not, because certain fans like certain things, certain fans don't. I think that's my because I did 3 Micromania shows back to back. The first crowd hated me. They hated me with a fiery passion. They were like, go pick on someone your own size, like kind of that stuff. The second and third show, they loved me. They loved me like crazy. They're like, oh yeah, kick that midget's ass, like it's so weird, like going from city to city, different people are gonna like you. I think the second and third crowd was probably a little bit more drunk.
Yeah.
Because it was a Friday, a Saturday night, and not a Thursday night, like my first show. So to them, it made a little bit more sense. But so I think that's kind of
that's crazy, yeah. Because Absolutely. And because like I've kind of relate kind of like nerves, because it's like I did ring announcing, like I made my debut doing ring announcing, and again I'm shy, so like I'm in the mic, I'm like, oh man, everyone's looking at me, I don't know what to do, like I've never done this before. So it's just crazy because I wait a little bit, because it's like everyone's watching you. Like it's different from like fighting, because you really don't focus on the crowd, you focus on your opponent. But this is like totally different. So it's like, oh no. But going into obviously working and training and everything, what was like the best advice that you got, like either from wrestlers or from your coaches, like from wrestling? Like what was the best advice you've been given to so far?
I think something that like resonates with me is like to never do anything you're not comfortable with. Because if you do something you're comfortable with, like in a match or in the ring, you can get hurt, or it can look bad, or like it'll make you look bad. If you do something that you're not fully comfortable with, you botch it. That's what people are gonna remember. That's what people are gonna remember the next show that day. They're gonna be like, oh, I remember that when you did that move and you just whatever, if that makes sense. Like I only do things that I'm comfortable with, so I don't get hurt and I look good.
That's great advice. It's very, very important too. But also like, what was it also like, did your school like ever brought like any like big names, or did you ever participate in seminars?
No, I haven't. We had big names at the shows, but we haven't brought any to like a class, like a class that we had. Just kind of like the people that, the normal people. We haven't had anything crazy. I haven't been able to do a seminar because there's not a lot.
Yeah.
And then they're always like far away. So I'm like, oh, do I really want to spend all the gas to drive 3 hours, 3.5 hours?
Yeah.
Spend, the money for the seminar, and then spend the money to drive back or possibly stay a night. It's a lot of money to be spending.
Yeah. But also, what was it like when you first off, like, what was it like when you first got the news that you were going to like now do your first match? What was it like, the whole experience coming out for the current for the first time? Like, what was that whole experience like for you?
So my very first show was September of 2021. I honestly did not think I was going to wrestle. Like I was so shocked when he's like, oh, like, do you want to wrestle? I'm like, me? You want me to wrestle? Are you sure? Are you sure about this? So I was kind of shocked because my coach pretty much going up into like until like October, or not October, the month before September. I can't remember what. Is it October? No. I'm like blanking on right now. The month before September, he was like, oh, you probably won't be in this show, you probably won't. So when he told me I was going to be in the show, I was like,
yeah.
What changed? What changed, honestly? Like, I was just like, yeah, let's do it. What's the worst thing that happens? It can't be that bad. We had a lot of people at first show, like 400 people. Like,
oh wow, that's good.
It was not a small show. So like I was so nervous, like nervous beyond anything, because I was like, I've never done anything like this. I had to like go out there and every eyes were on me. I've only done a few matches where every eye is on me. I've done 4 or 5 before this, like competing wise. Everything else was on a mat where like there was other competitors as well on the mat. Like there was 3 or 4 matches going on, so not everything was on me. It was definitely. I got really, really nervous. Like I ended up throwing up. Like I was so like, I was so nervous. I was so nervous. It was kind of warm too. It was warm. It was like there was a bunch of people in the back. It got like all like musty and like smell like dude. I was just like, this guy, I smell like dude. And then someone threw cologne, and that's what set it all off. Like, I smelled the cologne, the musty, hot. I like ran out and I'm throwing up outside a couple times. I was like, oh, I felt so much better afterwards, but I was like so nervous. People were making fun of me. They're like, don't do a pitch perfect. Don't do a pitch perfect. Like throwing up in the middle of the ring. I was like, but after that, after my first show, I never threw up again. You know, I would get the nerves, but I think it was just that one of like being able to know that I can do this, because I was so afraid of just completely bombing, honestly. And my coach was kind of afraid of me bombing as well, so it did help the situation. He was very uncertain of putting me in there, which did help because I was like, I'm uncertain, you're uncertain, why am I in here? But it was a good match. It was a good match. Nothing bad happened. You know, I was, overthinking a lot because I was like, I always overthink. I'm always like, oh, okay, go over what's gonna happen, But it was a good match. Only gotten better since then. I look back and I'm like, oh, that was me. Like I look so much better now. I can do stuff a lot quicker and faster, and I have more moves in my arsenal now.
And going to that match, were you the baby face or were you the heel?
I was a baby face. Yeah, I'm a baby face. I've done a few heel matches. I've done a few heel matches. But I prefer being babyface, and that's what I wrestle in my home promotion, as a babyface.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And you prefer babyface more than heel, right?
Yeah. It's a lot to think about when you're wrestling as a heel. There's so much more to think about. You have to think about making sure that you're looking like a heel and you're making the other person look good, and make sure that they're not looking dead. Like when you're giving them the heat and you do their host spots, and you have to make sure that the crowd doesn't like you. And, you have to take breaks and like talk smack to the crowd. And so it's a lot all happening at the same time. As a babyface, I feel there's like a lot less pressure because you're not running the match. You're kind of just taking all the moves. Yeah. And then you're like, oh, no. Like, and then, you get brought down again. So I feel it's a lot less pressure on you because you're not running the match and making sure that everyone looks good.
Oh yeah. And also, I want to ask, where did you come up with the name Queen of Hearts?
It was my fighting name when I was competing in like mixed martial arts. That was my nickname. Because I really like choking people out. Like that was like my finisher. Like, that would do a lot. That's how I win a lot of my matches, is like choking people out. I would do the bow and arrow choke. So that's kind of what I got my name from. That's original, and I just kind of brought it over because I really liked it. I was like, I could play off that character. I love Alice in Wonderland, so my gear right now is based off Alice in Wonderland, but I don't play that character. I play in between good, bad, I'm gonna beat up anyone that steps in that ring with me. It's kind of the character I play.
And also, mentioning earlier, you got to work with Micro Mania. How did that come about, you joining with them and working with them? And what's that experience like for working for them has been for you?
So the person who runs the Micro Mania wrestling show, like that's the actual name, is my home promoter. Like he runs both of them. So he runs Pro Wrestling Unplugged, Micro Mania Wrestling, and Battling Bombshells. So he runs those three promotions. Right now, I don't think the Battling Bombshells is like running. That's his all women's division. I don't think he has like a running promotion and matches going on, but he brings some of us to the Micro Mania. So he has the Battling Bombshells with the Micro Mania. So, oh my God, so much stuff has not happened during the Micro Mania. It's not even funny. My first one was local, which was nice. So I only had to drive to Lompoc, which is about 40 minutes away. Set up the ring. It was a really small crowd. I was a referee That's why I kind of first got it. And I did the battle, the what is the term? The rumbles, like where everyone goes in there, like 4, 5, 6 people. They all fight against
Gauntlet?
No, it's like the Royal Rumbles, but they're not. There's like another term. Like that's the WWE terms, right? For like when they have like 30, 40 people go in there.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like that. So everyone gets everyone. But I know there's another term. I'm just blanking on it right now. But it was, I think, 4 Micro Mania wrestlers and then me, like all in the ring, and we, whatever. I was out first. They all
you mean
piled.
like Battle Royal, right? Or something?
Yeah, Battle Royal.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did my stuff, blah, 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 and they all stacked on top of me, and then I was out. Because it's not over the ropes, it's pinfalls and stuff like that. So,
okay.
Yeah, pinfalls and submissions, I think. But I was out, and that was my first Micro Mania. I did, I think, a couple more. I did one where I wrestled against another average-sized person at a baseball stadium.
Okay.
I think that was really, really hard because the ring was only, is it 12 by 12?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So trying to position yourself so you can do the moves and stuff. I end up going on the curtain and jumping off and doing a crossbody. I slipped because it was wet.
Oh no.
And yeah, bruised my whole entire knee. Okay, and then that was kind of the highlight of that. I got stuck into a trash can. I got hit with a trash can lid. I got hit with like everything. She ended up running into a chair, and I ended up hitting her. But then after that, I did 3 other ones back to back to back. One in like near Riverside. I did singles matches with a micro wrestler. His name is Incubus.
Okay.
Did that match. Did 2 other ones with him as well. But it's definitely different. It's definitely harder because it's small. Mm-hmm. So being an average sized person in the small, and then it's so high, and then a lot of them are in bars. So like the roof is not very far from my head, or there's objects or TVs or whatever like right next to my head. So I'm like, okay, no jumping at all. Like I'm gonna stay my feet on the ground, or I'm gonna hit my head against something. The crowds are a lot different. Like
I was gonna say that too. I feel like it's much different from like a normal wrestling crowd.
Yeah, it's not a normal wrestling crowd. They just want to see people get hit with things. Like there's very little actual wrestling. There's a few wrestling, but then after that, you just hit each other with weapons and hit each other against like walls or whatever. But yeah, so it's really good. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot less bumping. But you get hit with like everything.
What's been like the most important thing you've learned from doing Micro Mania that's helped you along in your career?
I got more familiar talking on the mic because I would have to. It's a requirement when you're doing the shows. You have to go talk in front of the crowd. Kind of bring up like, I'm one of the battling bombshells. Yeah, I'm not a midget, but I'm here to kick a midget's ass.
Yeah.
So that was really important. I think that was the most thing that I took away from it, is being more familiar talking on the mic, which helps me in the long run. Because like I was so bad my first show. Like I was just like, hi, I'm the Queen of Hearts, Scarlet Rose, and I'm here to like whatever, and I was here to referee and be a referee for the night, and then my coach was like, talk more. It's like, I don't know what to say. I'm a referee, like I'm supposed to hide that I'm wrestling. I'm supposed to just be like here for guest referee kind of stuff. Yeah. And I was like, oh, you guys ready for some Micro Mania? He's like, afterwards, he's like, you were so awkward up there. You were so awkward. He barely told me anything. He's like, oh, you're just going to go up there and talk. I was like, okay. I didn't know there was a mic. I didn't know I was going to be in the middle of the ring. I thought I was just going to go up there, and talk like I would if I was wrestling. I don't have a mic when I'm wrestling. Like I just, be like, come on, like I thought that's what I was doing, not the mic. So I was like, caught off guard. He handed me the mic. I was like, oh, I'm talking on the mic. I had to hear myself. That was a huge difference. I have to actually hear myself when I'm speaking. It's a little bit different than hearing myself when I'm speaking like this. It's like on a mic, so I hear myself through the speakers and how I sound there, which sounds different. It was such a huge difference. He didn't tell me anything at all. He's just like, you're just gonna speak you're gonna go out there and you're gonna speak. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
He told me there was a mic involved. I've never been to one of these. I've never, I don't know anything about these. But I got up there. I did it. I spoke. I was awkward, but it's fine. They'll probably never see me again.
and also saying you refed. Did you have any did you do anything in wrestling school, learning how to ref, or was this first time ever reffing?
We had a couple of people training as refs, so I was there. I understand the concept, but it is a lot different reffing Micro Mania than a regular match. So I was running a regular match where I'm supposed to be the non-bias, kind of that stuff. And he didn't tell me any different, so that's how I did it. And he's like, no, you need to be reactive. You have to be all this stuff. You have to be very animated when you're reffing Micro Mania because these are wrestling fans. I'm like, thanks for telling me afterwards. I was like, I don't know. I'm like, I've never reffed professionally in a match, and I've only known what you've taught people. They're don't smile, stay, straight face, kind of slightly react, but not anything crazy. So that's how I was treating it. I'm like, he's like, no, Micro Mania needs to be completely different. I'm like, cool, didn't know that. Awesome. Yeah. Next time for sure. I'll be like, oh my God, I can't believe they just hit each other with a chair.
Yeah.
Or whatever. I did the parts I was supposed to do. I checked them. I found one of the guys has weapons, so you're supposed to find a weapon and be like, oh, why do you have brass knuckles? Or why do you have a chain? Or why do you have a knife or whatever? So I did all that part. I did the spots, but there's also no rules. So you're only there to count pins. You're not supposed to count if they're on the ropes, getting choked or anything like that. You're not supposed to get off the ropes. You just kind of okay, cool, do whatever you want. So it was definitely different.
And also, I remember because in the past I've interviewed a wrestler that did the Micro Mania, Gemini, and
Gemini, yeah,
Gemini, and you worked with her, right? You've had matches with her, and what was it experience working with her?
She's really, really sweet, very kind. It's just hard to work a match, me being a baby face, her being a baby face. That was my main problem is I'm supposed to developing this character as a baby face, but I'm wrestling you all the time. You're she's tiny, she's 4'8", I'm 5'5"-ish. That's another story. There was 3 guys wrestling. We're all 5'5", right? But we're all different heights. I'm like, one of us are lying about our heights here. Okay, I'm taller than you, and you're saying you're 5'5". That makes no sense. But 5'5", 4'8", I'm 9 inches taller than her, so I look gigantic compared to her. But when I was wrestling for EWF, when I wrestled her, I was wrestling as a heel, so that was fine. But when I do my home promotion, I was wrestling as babyface. So I'm fans were kind of didn't know what to do because I'm a known babyface there, but then I'm wrestling someone so short who's also babyface, so I look like a monster. So people were cheering but not cheering, and it was just a weird mix. So I was like, I would like to wrestle someone average size, please.
Yeah.
So I can be my babyface. I can develop my babyface, my character as well. I was able to do that. Wrestling with my lucha when I wrestled for CCW up north, California Championship Wrestling. I do lucha there. I was able to develop a lot there. People went crazy because I was like one of the first females to like be wrestling with the company.
Oh wow.
So I was wrestling against all guys, but they went crazy for me. Like there was it was a tag team. There was another person. It was so like people were like, it was so quiet when he was wrestling. It wasn't even funny. As soon as I come in, the crowd like fucking pops, goes crazy, cheering, going like wild. It's loud. It's like, oh, it's because he was in the ring. That's the only reason why they were quiet. No one wanted to see him. He was just there riding on my coattail, barely.
Oh wow, that's crazy. But also, you know, mentioning working with that promotion, also working for EWF too, which EWF has been around for, you know, such a long time. How did that come around, you working for EWF, and what was the whole experience like working with Jesse Hernandez in that company?
Yeah, it was good. They were very supportive of what, you know, they wanted to incorporate me. I feel like a lot of time when I watch indie wrestling, when it's mixed genders, the women's just kind of like on the sideline, like kind of being there. But they're like, no, we want to get you involved. We want you to do this. You know, you're doing a lot, which was a different change, I guess. Like I was like, oh, you know, like, oh, that's crazy. I was like, oh, wrestling for an outside promotion. I didn't think I would be like that. Like that supported. So that was really good. They were like very like, oh no, like you're gonna be doing this, you're gonna do this, you're gonna do that. I'm like, okay, yeah, like that's awesome. I was able to like I was more part of the team, I guess. That makes sense. Like it was surprising, but it was good. I was like, at least, you know, there's some promotions that are good, you know. So I was very happy. I knew one of the wrestlers, like one of the wrestlers that I wrestled with and trained with was wrestling at EWF.
Oh, okay.
So that's how I kind of got into it. They saw me being there. So they're like, oh, you're a wrestler? I'm like, yeah. Like, oh, we have Jim and I free to wrestle. I'm like, cool. But yeah, it works. But, you know, like, I only wrestle her when I go over there.
Yeah.
Basically.
Okay.
But I drive for a very long time. It's really far for me. It's like 5 hours. So it's 5 hours for like $30.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sitting twice that just to get there. So
yeah.
That's
wrestling.
my issue. That's my issue. Besides that, it was really good. I liked working with the people. The people were very kind. The promoters were very kind. Black Metal, which is like the actual promoter. Jesse's the owner. I see him. I've talked to him a couple times. I've talked to his wife. They're really nice, but they're not the main people I deal with. I deal with Black Metal a lot. I talk to him a lot more.
And after your match, like, did you receive any like criticism or any advice from Black Metal?
He told me not to overthink. That was like the main thing, because there was so many people in the ring. I didn't want to overstep my place. You know, both of them were doing their double spot, like their spot together. So I was kind of just there, and then they're like beating up the guy, and I was just kind of there. And then I was like, and then as soon as they left, I ran over there and started punching him too. So it's like 3 people on one person. That's a lot of like people. It's not enough room because they're not little guys, you know. They're not little. They're gigantic compared to me. And then it's just like, it's funny watching the video. Like they're like beating him up, and then as soon as they get off, you just see me running over there, like beating him up. I was like, oh my god. It was honestly so funny to watch, but I was like, I don't want to like mess up with your guys' plan. I didn't know what was next, you know. I wasn't involved in the creation of that section of it, so I was like, I didn't know what to do. But when their what do you call it, managers were helping me a lot. They were like, go over there, you know, like, you know, and he gave me some advice too. He's like, you know, treat it like it was like a street fight. You know, you're not going to just leave someone there, you know, like take, you know, as a heel, you need to like take advantage of like when your opponent is like whatever. I'm like, yeah, but I've never worked as a heel. Like, I don't know this. No one's helping me. I just got, you know, like they're like, do you want to wrestle? I'm like, okay, yeah. And then they know I wrestle as a baby face and put me as a heel, but like don't help me like figure out how to do that and stuff, or like where I should be involved, what I should do, which would have been useful.
Yeah.
Which would have helped a lot because I was kind of lost a lot of time. Like I feel like when I'm watching back, you can see I was kind of lost. I was just there, like trying to figure out what I need to be doing in the match.
That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, guys like Black Metal have been wrestling like for a very long time. I mean, I was a little kid and I used to go to UW shows all the time, and I remember he was wrestling, when he was tag champ. So like, it's crazy now he's still doing it and still working, which is great. But also, especially with now wrestling that you don't really see, especially like in big promotions, you don't really see a lot of like intergender wrestling. Like you don't see WWE doing it or AEW, but you see companies like Impact doing it. I want to know, what are your thoughts on intergender wrestling? Do you think it's good for the sport, or do you think it's kind of bad for the sport?
I think it's good for the sport. So, we don't be seen as separate, entities. Like when I was wrestling high school, like I was wrestling boys as well, not just females.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be good because it'd be like, oh, like women, it's not, they're not good as for women, they're like, I feel like we're looked at and compared to the men, but we're seen as like less because, we're wrestling against, only females. Like, oh, she's good for a female. Like, she's good for a female wrestler. There's more intergender, especially like in the WWE, you see like, oh, she's a good wrestler in general, like I kind of, that's how I view it. Is like, if there's women going against men, it's like, oh, she's a good wrestler, period. Not just because, she's a female or she's good for being a female. So I encourage it. I like it, like I think it's good. And then at the same time, I have a lot of little fans being like, oh my God, how were you able to beat up the boys? Or like, that kind of stuff. It's because like a lot of girls don't think they can beat up boys, or they don't think they can compete with boys, which they're more than capable of,
And also like you just mentioned right now, having fans and having people come up to you. What was that whole experience like? Even like for the first time, like having people come and take pictures of you. Like, what was that whole experience like to have someone that wants to take a picture and autograph? Like, what was that whole experience for you?
I really liked it. I liked having fans. I liked having that whole like aspect of people like looking up to me. They're like, oh, I want to be like you when I grow up, that kind of stuff. I really liked it. I've had it a lot growing up in wrestling because in my area, I was one of the only females when I was younger competing. So when I got older, there was like a little girl that was like, their parents came up to me at one of the tournaments because I was coaching. And they're like, she saw you wrestle, she saw you wrestle, so she wanted to wrestle. So I've dealt with it when I was younger as well, like doing my wrestling sports, my jiu-jitsu, I had little girls look up to me. So it's anything too new, but I still like the feeling, I really enjoy it. It's a good feeling. It's like I'm here to promote myself and promote that women can do anything.
And then especially with now, wrestling, now with social media kind of being a big thing, promoting yourself and posting as much as you have to when you're promoting. Like, how's it been for you? Like, has it been easy for you to kind of do social media stuff, or has it been kind of difficult?
Personally, it's been very difficult because I've never been super, super big into social media. So I kind of like, I have them, but I don't really like go on them or post much. So it's very different, like to posting at least once a week to every other, couple days a week to like, you can't leave your account not posting for like a month,
Yeah.
So it's a lot different because it's a hassle for me because like I have to remember, which is super hard. I'm like, oh, I haven't posted in a couple days. I need to post something, something like of me training, of, different things to keep myself, I've noticed the more I post, the more people see it, the more like, people interact, people follow. But it's so hard for me. It's I'm 23, so I kind of grew up in the era where phones weren't really big. My family couldn't afford them, you know, like because my parents were super young when they had me, so like I got a phone maybe junior high, and then I got like I think I got like the little slider, you know, like
oh
like,
yeah
yeah, and I had an iPod. But then like when I got in high school, you know, I got a smartphone, like so it's a little bit different. I feel like for like people who are a little bit younger than me and, you know, maybe have had more money growing up, they're probably more used to it, like social media, like having social media, wanting to post. I kind of just have them to like watch other people post.
Yeah.
That's basically why I have them. Like I'm like, you know, I do these things, but I'm not like, I'm kind of very reserved and like who I am and stuff like that. So I kind of keep my social life to me. So having to be like, oh, this is what I'm doing. Come see me, come follow me. You know, like it's a lot, like a different aspect of who like I am before being in wrestling.
And especially now, you know, because I've seen wrestlers now that have been on point with social media, and also like they post and then they do merch and then they do all these things. Like it's just crazy because there's been some like they don't do a lot of that, but then there's some that just go out crazy with t-shirts and merch and hats. I'm like, wow, like geez, you know.
Yeah.
But you know, also, you know, with wrestling today, and especially with women's wrestling, now we're seeing more, you know, pay-per-views being headlined, like all women's pay-per-views being headlined, just all women's wrestlers. What are your thoughts as of now women's wrestling today?
It definitely has improved. It's gotten better. I think there's some more steps to take, you know, like I think women's wrestling is still very, I guess, sexualized, I guess, like seeing how they dress, how they act. It's a lot different than when you see in the men's, you know, men's wrestling. But I think it's definitely better than it has been, like watching older wrestling where they didn't get a lot of TV time, even less than they are now. It was kind of seen as like a pastime for the next men's match back in the day, like in the 70s, 80s, wasn't really taken that serious. I think it's definitely taken a lot serious. They're making a lot more money than they were back then. They make more money than UFC fighters.
Yeah. Yeah.
They make a lot more money than UFC fighters. Like the women's section. So I definitely think they're in the right path for sure. Like I think that.
Yeah, because like I started watching wrestling like early mid 2000s, and again they weren't really taking that serious, you know, especially now, you know, we're seeing, like I said, now we're seeing so many things happening, like Impact and NWA and even WWE doing all women pay-per-views now. And then even the Royal Rumble, like yesterday, it was all women's. So it's definitely seen a huge step from that. But also, you know, today and everything with AEW and all these promotions and New Japan and WWE, how much wrestling do you watch today?
Today, I try to watch probably at least a couple hours a week. That's like nothing compared to a lot of other people. But that's what I try to do. I try to watch a couple hours of wrestling a week. I think that's...
Which is good, yeah.
Yeah, it's better than before. But I don't know if I'll ever be like some of these people who watch it like, oh, you know, Monday night, and, you know, I watch old stuff, you know, stuff that's been recorded. I don't save time to watch it live. Like
live, yeah.
Yeah. But it's the same thing with like my mixed martial arts. Like I wouldn't watch UFC all the time. I'd watch maybe a pay-per-view once a year to twice a year, you know, that's it. Like that's all I would watch. Or like wrestling, like high school wrestling, they had Olympics, but I would never like turn it on and, you know, watch it. But if I would see it on, like when I went out to a restaurant, if it was there, I would watch it. But it's nothing I personally would like want to turn on and watch because I'd rather
Yeah.
be doing it. I personally rather be doing it than watch someone else do it because I want to be there someday.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, and like especially like with me, like I'll be honest, like I only watch pretty much AEW. Like I don't watch WWE as much anymore, you know. But like I have friends that like they watch New Japan, they watch WWE, they watch AEW, they watch Impact. I'm just like, oh my god, how can you do that? This is too much. Like I love wrestling, but this is, you know, this is a little bit too much sometimes.
Yeah, there's some people who like are like that in training. I'm like, well, you know, if you spend as much wrestling as much time that you watch wrestling, if you put some of that time, just a fraction of that time, in more into training and like outside of practice, you would be better. Like you would be better because you're spending so much time watching wrestling. That's cool. You know wrestling already. You already know that aspect of wrestling. Now you need to spend that wrestling time you would watch it to go work out, go do this kind of stuff, you know, because they're always like, oh, I want to get better, I want to do this, but then they take off certain practices because they want to watch wrestling. Or like if I host a practice, they're like, oh, I can't make it for some bullshit reason, and I'm like, you're watching fucking wrestling, dude. Like
they're probably taking notes.
I know, but they watched it their whole life. They've watched it their whole life. They need more time in the ring or more time working out, running, exercising, push-ups, you know, to get stronger.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, if you could balance, I mean, it's good to do a little bit both because obviously.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying all the time. I'm just saying like they just spent like an hour every day of what they've watched to go work out. They would be a lot better. They would be a lot better. Because they're the ones that watch like New Japan, the AEW, you know, like they watched all of them. That's a lot of time.
Yeah,
That's a lot of time.
Yeah, because you think about it, each program, each show is about like 2 hours. So like, you know, this is and in Raw too, it's like 3 hours. So it's like it's a lot. But you know, with now, you know, what are your goals as of now? Like, what's the goal for you? Like, what promotions would you like to work with in the future?
I don't know if there's like a set promotion that I'm like, oh my god, like this is, you know, I'm open to anything. Honestly, any, you know, person that wants me to be on their show, I'm down for. I don't mind traveling, but the money has to be correct to travel. Like I can't travel to other states and lose $300 personally because I don't have money like that. Yeah, so that's kind of my issue because someone, you know, like hit me up wanting to wrestle out of state. They're like $100. I'm like, that's really good pay, you know, like I know it is, but it's gonna cost me $400 to get there. Like it's gonna cost me $400 to get there. I don't have all the money in the world to like go travel. Yeah, but I wouldn't mind doing any type of TV wrestling or anything like that. And I say TV wrestling because it's not just WWE or AEW, or there's other promotions that do like smaller TV wrestling. Yeah. If I got a WWE or AEW, I'd be like, oh my god, like stop everything. I'm gonna go over there. But that's everyone's dream, you know. Like every wrestler that's here doesn't want it. Like if they had the opportunity, of course they would jump in a heartbeat, you know.
Yeah, of course. But when you were working with promotions, who would you like to work with in the future? Like what wrestlers would you like to, you know, work with? Is there any like list or names?
That's a good question. I'm kind of like just being myself. I'm like, I want to go against anyone that has a belt right now.
Ooh, okay.
Because I'm like, ooh, I want that. I want to challenge that. I want to beat you for that. You know, that's kind of just my personality. I want to wrestle whoever.
That martial arts coming in.
Yeah. Anyone that has a belt right now, I'm like, I'm down to wrestle you, beat you.
Any champions out there? She's calling you out, guys.
I know. Any champions out there?
That's awesome. But you know, ending this, I want to give one more question. If someone's watching this and wants to, you know, get into business and be a pro wrestler, what advice would you give to someone that wants to be a wrestler?
be a wrestler. Don't wait. Do it. You know, you only have so much time. That older you get, the harder it is to get into it. I would dedicate time. Being consistent is super important. If you only wrestle once every other week, or once a month, once every 6 months, and you're expecting to go out there and compete and do matches, it's going to be really hard. You have to be dedicated and spend a lot of time, which I don't think a lot of people really understand when they're like, oh, how fans want to be WWE wrestler. It's like, yeah, TV wrestling, you know that, but it's completely different doing it inside the ring. Always do something. Don't ever do anything you're not comfortable with. Learning new moves, if you're not quite comfortable, the chances are you're going to get hurt, but know where your baby steps. Let's say you don't do the full move, but you get on the ropes and you do something else. Like you just jump down, you get on the ropes, you jump down instead of twisting and doing a crossbody or whatever. Just being baby your steps up there, push yourself to get better and do more moves, but at the same time, don't do anything you're gonna hurt yourself. Hurt yourself doing. I think that would be my number one thing is know your body, do what you're comfortable with, work yourself way up there, and never do a show for free. Never do a show for free. even if it's a food or $10 or $20, never always do something for it, because it is your time, it is your body. If you do it for free, they're gonna expect it the next time. Exactly. So it's so I that's what I would say to new people like wrestling. Never do anything for free. And do whatever you feel comfortable with.
Nice. Great advice. I like it. Again, thank you so much. I had so much fun talking to you. Thank you so much for being on the pod. We really do appreciate it.
Awesome. I appreciate it as well.
Before we wrap up, is there anything you would like to plug in, booking, social media for the fans to follow you out there?
At the Queen of Hearts Scarlet Rose on Instagram or Facebook. I have my show coming up in Los Baños and Oakdale on the 19th and the 20th. If you do my social media, I'll be posting them. I have one already for Oakdale on the 19th, and the 20th for Los Baños should be soon. Not sure who I'm going to compete against, but it doesn't matter because I'm going to kick the butt in the ring.
Nice. And again, we'll put everything down in the description down below with the social medias. Please do yourself a favor and follow her. And if you ever see her in town, buy your tickets because it's going to be great.
Exactly.
So again, thank you so much. And again, thank you for everyone watching out there. And we'll see you guys next time here at Championship on the Line.